You are protecting your child from invisible traps. We live in a world where subliminal messages are everywhere, shaping our children's minds and distorting what really matters. But how can you protect yourself? I searched for answers in hell. Yes, in hell, a place where souls are lost, consumed by lies that began invisibly and subtly but grew to take over their lives. The devil uses subliminal messages to steal the souls of our children. He is cunning. Don't fall into his clutches. Subscribe to our channel and download our ebook, The 10 Great Sins That Lead to Hell. More than 1 million people have changed their lives with this knowledge. The link is in the first pinned comment. Units are limited, so download it now and don't miss this opportunity. Don't fall into the enemy's traps anymore. I am Carlos, an ordinary man, a dedicated father, but also someone who never imagined that his life would be dragged into something so dark, something beyond his understanding. My son, Lucas, was always a happy, curious boy full of energy and life, but in recent months, something changed. He became different. In a subtle but profound way. He used to love playing with his friends, but now he spent hours and hours in front of screens, computers, cell phones, and televisions. At first, I thought it was a phase, but I soon realized it was something more. His behavior changed. He lost interest in his studies and played with other children, for the simple pleasure of running and playing soccer. His grades began to drop, and he locked himself away in a world where no one seemed more important than the influences he followed. I tried to talk to him and explain the importance of learning to break out of that bubble, but he ignored me. All he wanted to do was stay home consuming that content. He didn't understand what was happening. It was as if something invisible had taken over his mind. It seemed like a distant, anxious emptiness, as if his soul was being pulled away from me, as if he were falling into a digital abyss that consumed him from within. It was in a moment of absolute despair when I prayed, crying out to God with all my being to show me what was happening to my son. I knew evil had infiltrated his life, but I didn't know where it came from or what it was. It was in that intense prayer, in that moment of faith, when something extraordinary happened. I felt a deep sleep and fell asleep instantly. I was transported to a place I never imagined. It wasn't a simple nightmare, it was something real, something I could feel, see, and touch. I was in hell. Before I continue, I want to remind you not to fall into the enemy's traps. I was in hell, but not the hell most people imagine, with only fire and flames. No, what I saw was much worse. The hell I saw was full of fire, yes, but also of distortion and suffering. The ground was burning, the flames dancing, creating a suffocating heat. The air was thick, heavy, and the feeling of anguish was oppressive. I could barely breathe. I saw demons, grotesque and deformed beings with eyes full of fury walking through the flames. Some had twisted human bodies, others moved like shadows with sharp claws and macabre smiles. They were manipulating souls, forcing them to live endless agony. But what shocked me most was what I saw next. These demons were controlling devices, televisions, computers, cell phones, the same devices my son used, but they're in hell. These devices were distorted and deformed, as if they had a life of their own, feeding off the souls of those who used them. The subliminal messages were woven by these demons with macabre precision. I saw images of children being influenced, their minds poisoned with the idea of consuming, of wanting more and more, without realizing that they were being consumed from within by the pacts made by big brands, to attract children and guarantee their success. They were sent to hell, where cunning demons prepared traps to manipulate young people. Something terrible happened. Pacts with the devil really do exist. They sell their souls for money and success. At that moment, I understood that what my son was experiencing was not just a common phase. He was being affected by demonic messages implanted through those devices. These were tools used to corrupt children's souls, distancing them from the truth and distancing them from God. I saw that the origin of these messages was not just advertising or market influence, but something much deeper, something evil, coming directly from hell. Then, a deep and sinister voice echoed around me. Now you see, Carlos, this is the true origin of the evil that your son and so many other young souls face. The messages that seem harmless, the ones that attract them, are seeds planted by us here in the depths of hell. Souls are created and spread, draining God's light from them. I knew I was receiving a vision from God, a revelation about the origin of what was affecting my son. He wasn't just a spectator, he was a living witness to what was happening in the shadows, where the forces of evil manipulated the minds of children, drawing them away from the true light. The sight of Anna moved me deeply, like a direct blow to the soul. She was lost in hell, a tormented soul. Her empty eyes reflected the despair of a life consumed by the incessant desire for more. When Anna was alive, she was a woman dominated by a growing obsession with material things. What seemed like a simple attraction to advertising transformed into a prison that destroyed her life, and now she saw the result of that empty pursuit since her childhood. Anna was fed by the lie of consumerism. At first, it was the illusion of the toys and products that appeared in commercials, promising instant happiness and satisfaction. But that wasn't just a child's game, it was there that the first seed of desire was planted. Without realizing it, she began to associate happiness with external things, believing that to be happy, she needed to have what was being sold. With each new purchase, a false sense of agency filled her momentary emptiness. But soon that emptiness returned, deeper and deeper. I watched her grow, always looking for the next thing, whether it was an item of clothing, a new cell phone, or expensive makeup. The years passed, but the obsession never diminished. On the contrary, it only increased. She spent what she didn't have, she went into debt, but she kept searching for something that would make her feel complete. Even though deep down, she knew she was never truly happy. Each new product, each new fashion item, became a small escape from a greater pain, but also an invisible chain that kept her prisoner. When she died, what was superficial behavior transformed into eternal torment in hell. The scene in front of me was desperate. Anna was surrounded by piles of things she had bought throughout her life, things that once made her feel important, valid, happy. But now those things were just empty memories, like trophies from a life that had no real meaning. She tried to touch everything, but nothing fulfilled her, nothing brought her more joy or satisfaction. Anna's prison in hell was not made of chains or visible fire, but something much more powerful, the spiritual void created by the incessant consumption. She was condemned to relive her search, always on the move, always trying to obtain something, but never achieving true satisfaction. The flames were not physical. The true fire that consumed her was the despair of never having found what she was seeking, the sensation that something was always missing, something was always out of reach. The demons were behind everything, manipulating her emotions, feeding her desire to have more, to be more, creating the false promise that happiness lay in what she possessed. But Anna didn't know that instead of fulfilling her, those things were distorting her, distancing her from everything that truly mattered. She was so obsessed with having that she couldn't realize her soul was being consumed in hell. Now she was aware of her failure, the devastating mistake she made by allowing consumerism to control her, and that perception only increased her suffering. Anna could no longer escape that desperate search. Every time she touched an object, it fell apart as if it were nothing. She ran after more, always wanting the next product, the next sensation, but she could never find peace. The pain she felt wasn't from a material loss, but from a lost soul, a soul that was distorted by the lie that external things could fill its inner emptiness. The vision, Anna's, was a cruel reminder of how he, with his own subliminal messages and manipulation of human emotions, can destroy not only a person's life but their very soul. She was trapped in an eternal cycle, a cycle of searching, frustration, and despair without ever achieving true peace. Now she was condemned to live this forever with no hope of escape. Before I continue, I want to remind you not to fall into the enemy's traps. I also saw one, who, from a young age, was influenced by programs that glorified rebellion and disobedience. He rejected everything good, everything right, and was now condemned to suffer for his arrogance and the bad decisions he made. He was trapped, condemned by rebellion, which had been fueled by the media and eternal influences. The vision of one was even more painful and distressing. He was in a hell, but unlike Anna, whose prison was fueled by consumerism. His came from rebellion and disobedience. What I witnessed was a soul tortured not by the material goods he desired to achieve, but by his rejection of the truth and obedience to God, something that had been planted in him since he was young. Juan was seduced by the subliminal messages of the culture of disobedience and rebellion. As a child, he was always influenced by television programs, movies, and even video games that glorified disobedience. He saw heroes rebelling against their parents, teachers, rules, and authorities, as if true freedom consisted of not having any kind of restriction or responsibility. He grew up absorbing the idea that being free meant having no limits and that everything others said or did was an impediment to his true happiness. I saw him in his childhood surrounded by cartoons and action programs where heroes challenged everything and everyone. Juan admired those characters, believing that being like them was the key to true freedom. Little by little, he began to internalize that philosophy. He disobeyed his parents, ignored his teachers, and disrespected the authorities at school. When I reprimanded him, he responded angrily, feeling unfairly treated. He didn't see disobedience as something wrong, but rather as a right, a way of expressing his true identity. This rebellion continued to grow as he grew older. In adolescence, Juan began to move away from everything that represented authority, religion, family values, and social norms that he saw as limitations on his freedom. He became more aggressive, and his relationship with his parents and friends deteriorated. Everything he perceived as an obstacle to his will was treated with contempt. He felt powerful, believing his rebellion was an expression of his strength. But what he didn't understand was that this rebellion was being fueled by forces. He didn't see demonic forces that controlled his perception of freedom. Evil didn't come only from his own will, but from the manipulation he suffered through the subliminal messages that infiltrated his mind, telling him that everything imposed on him was an obstacle he must break. It was this spirit of rebellion that led him to destruction in his youth. Juan followed the path of self-sufficiency and the denial of God. By the time he reached adulthood, he was completely removed from faith, living in a cycle of complacency, pride, and arrogance. He believed he had all the answers, that his rebellion made him superior, but the truth was different. He sank deeper and deeper into darkness, ignoring all the warnings around him. Juan died young in an accident caused by his own recklessness. He was driving irresponsibly, disregarding the consequences, trusting only in his own strength and abilities, disregarding the limits established for his safety. When the impact occurred, he had no time to reflect on his choices, and when his soul was taken to hell, it was there that his true storm in hell began. Juan was not greeted by flames and physical pain, as many imagine. The true pain he experienced did not come from the fire that burned him, but from the guilt of having rejected the truth and wisdom that were always before him. He was trapped, but in a psychological and emotional way, in a mental hell reflected in his own rebellion. He was constantly confronted with his choice to disobey the light, now aware that his freedom was an illusion, a path that led him away from God and salvation. I saw him run desperately from one side to the other, trying to escape from something he could not see, but that he knew was chasing him. He tried to break free, invisible chains, but those chains weren't physical, they were in her mind, in her soul, and they were the resistance to the truth that she had cultivated all her life. With each step she took, she found herself more trapped, further away from any possibility of peace. Hell not only burned her flesh, but her soul, confronting her eternally with the choice she had made, the choice to reject the good, the divine order, and the teachings that could have set her free. The vision of Sophia was one of the most painful and tragic I witnessed in hell. She was there, an empty, tortured soul trapped in a cycle of insecurity that completely consumed her. When Sophia was alive, she was a woman who never felt enough since she was a child. She was bombarded by the media, society, and unattainable aesthetic standards, which made her live with the constant feeling that something was missing inside her. But what I saw in that dark place wasn't just a lost soul, it was the total distortion of what she should have been since she was young. Sophia was immersed in a world that valued appearance above all else. Beauty product commercials, fashion magazines, perfect images of celebrities. All of this infiltrated her mind, teaching her that happiness and acceptance could only be achieved through a flawless physical appearance. Every image she saw seemed to reinforce the idea that her true identity lay in her appearance, not in who she really was. She couldn't understand that true beauty came from within, but instead, she was led to believe that the body was the only thing that, as Sophia grew up, gave herself over more and more to the obsession with a perfect body. Restrictive diets, plastic surgeries, and cosmetic treatments. She did everything to achieve the perfection promised in every commercial, in every image of the ideal woman. But what wasn't all she knew was that by trying to become the perfect woman, she was losing herself. She was not only destroying her body but her soul as well. The insecurity never left her alone. She never felt pretty enough, thin enough, or young enough. The emptiness she felt grew as she tried to fill it with more and more procedures and products, but deep down, she knew none of it was real. She knew she was searching for something she could never find in a beauty cream or plastic surgery. Nothing fulfilled her, and with each frustrated attempt to achieve perfection, she felt herself sinking deeper and deeper into an endless abyss. When Sophia died, the tragedy of her life was reflected in hell, in an even crueler way. I saw Sophia in that place surrounded by mirrors, but those mirrors didn't reflect her outward appearance. Instead, the mirrors showed the true fragility of her soul, the deep pain she carried inside. She looked at herself and saw a distorted version of who she had always tried to be. The reflection in the mirror was not a beautiful woman, but an empty woman, a woman who she never found peace with her own image. And now in hell, the distortion became even more horrible. She was being tormented by her own insecurity. Hell wasn't just a matter of physical fire for Sophia. Hell was a psychological prison, a prison built by an obsession with her appearance. She was surrounded by distorted images of herself, as if evil were using her own insecurity to create a reality of eternal suffering. Every time she tried to distance herself from the images, the distortions multiplied, as if hell were feeding her doubts, making the pain even more unbearable. Sophia ran from mirror to mirror but never managed to escape the distorted vision of herself. Her soul was trapped in a cycle of self-criticism and regret, doomed to relive her search for perfection and validation. She was trapped not only by the image society had imposed on her but by her own inability to accept who she truly was. The pain of not being enough consumed her. The idea that there was always something wrong with her, something imperfect, prevented her from seeing the true truth of her own dignity and worth. The fire that burned Sophia wasn't just physical but a spiritual fire, fueled by the guilt and shame she carried. She couldn't forgive herself for getting lost in her own insecurity, for allowing lies about her image and worth to take over her life. Every breath seemed like a cry of pain, not because of her death, but because of her lack of understanding that the truth lay not in her body but in her soul. Sophia was condemned to live eternally in a place of mental distortion where her own insecurity was her prison in hell. She understood too late that the physical perfection she so desired could never be the answer to the emptiness she felt, and now she was lost forever, trapped in a cycle of suffering, condemned for her relentless pursuit of something that could never bring her peace. While Sophia lost herself in her own suffering, trapped by the distortion of her image, something began to change in the air. The darkness that enveloped hell seemed to dissipate for a moment, and a soft, radiant light began to emerge on the horizon. I felt a powerful presence, a feeling of immeasurable peace and love intensified, and then I saw Jesus. His appearance was not that of an imposing man, but rather that of someone who radiated deep compassion and wisdom. He walked with a tranquility that, unlike the lost souls and demons around him, seemed to restore order where there had been chaos. He looked directly at me, his eyes full of love and understanding, as if he knew exactly what I was witnessing. He approached and, with a calm and authoritative voice, spoke, "Carlos, you are seeing the true essence of human suffering. Presence here is not only about the physical pain but about the souls that have subtly and gradually moved away from me, believing the lies the world offers." What happened to Anna Juan and Sophia was not an accident. It was not a simple wrong choice. They were manipulated by forces that act invisibly, seducing me from happiness, They were searching for something that can only be found in me, true peace, true beauty, true freedom. He paused for a moment, and his gaze deepened as if trying to convey an eternal truth. Consumerism, rebellion, insecurity, all these things we see in the world today. These traps are created to draw souls away from my love. People are searching in everything superficial for that which only I can offer, the truth about themselves, about the purpose of life, about the true meaning of happiness. I remained silent, deeply touched by Jesus' words, but at the same time, a sense of urgency began to take hold of me. He noticed and continued, the voice was even softer but firmer, Carlos, what you saw here is not the end, it is not just a vision meant to cause sadness. I am showing you this so that you understand the depth of the evil that exists in the world. You, as a father, now have a great responsibility. Your son, Lucas, is being attracted to those same comic strips. He is being affected by the messages that emerge everywhere in the media, in advertising, on social media, but you can change that. You can be the light that will guide him back to the right path. What you saw was a revelation of how evil works, but you must also see that hope and salvation are within me. I felt an indescribable peace when he said that, but also the heavy responsibility he was bestowing upon me. Jesus looked at me with compassion, and I knew that he was not accusing me but calling me to a mission. Salvation is not in avoiding suffering, but in showing people the path that leads to true life, in showing love, the truth, and the peace that only I can give, and you, Carlos, can help your son and others understand this. This is not just extended, his hand, as if inviting me to take a step forward. Wake up from this vision, Carlos, rise and take care of your son, alert those around you. It's not enough to merely perceive the traps, it's necessary to act, teach the truth, guide lost souls back to my heart. The moment he said these words, the vision began to fade, the light emanating from Jesus was fading away, but your presence was indelibly marked on my soul. I knew without a doubt that this experience was not just a revelation, but a calling. Hell, lost souls, the manipulation of evil, all of that was real, but there was hope and salvation. Jesus gave me the key to help my son and others escape the traps of the modern world. Before the vision completely disappeared, Jesus gave me a gentle smile, a smile full of love and patience, and said, "Go, Carlos. Do not be afraid, for I will be with you every step of the way. Teach the truth, bring light to the dark world." Then I woke up panting, my eyes filled with tears. The light of Christ was still with me, and a certainty came over me. I knew what I had to do, protect my son Lucas, warn the people around me, and fight the lies of the world. It was time to act, to show others the true path, the path that leads to peace, light, and true happiness. I woke with a start, my heart beating rapidly, strength in my chest, as if I had been pulled from a deep nightmare. The feeling of divine presence was still with me, like a flame that never goes out, a light shining brightly in my heart. The vision of Jesus, his words, his instructions were engraved in my soul. I knew it was no longer just about understanding, observing, it was time to act, to take a stand. Still stunned by what I had just experienced, I looked to the side and saw Lucas, my son, lying in bed with his cell phone in his hand. His image no longer seemed innocent to me. That child, so full of life and joy, was being consumed by something I hadn't fully understood until that moment, but that Jesus had shown me. He was being affected by the traps of the world, by the subliminal lies that surrounded him, by the messages that distorted his vision of what was truly important. I knew I couldn't waste any more time. Lucas was on the verge of being consumed by this emptiness, and as a father, it was my duty to guide him back to the light. Jesus had called me to act, to make a difference, to not only understand evil, but also to fight it. I stood up with determination and approached Lucas. He was distracted, focused on his cell phone screen, but I knew it wasn't his fault. It was the influence of a world that made him believe happiness was found in the wrong things, in the products, in the idols that society tries to impose on us. "Lucas," I told him in a firm but loving voice, "we need to talk." He looked at me with a confused expression, as if he didn't quite understand the urgency in my voice. I sat down next to him and looked directly into his eyes. I know you like being online, having fun with your games and videos, but you know, son, that what you see there isn't always real. There's an evil that tries to hide in those messages, that tries to distance us from what really matters. He began to frown, probably not understanding very well. But I followed those influencers with more urgency. Those ads, everything you see on the screen are traps. They don't show you true happiness, Lucas. True happiness comes from love, from the truth, from faith in God, not from the things you buy or see. I was in a vision, son. I saw hell and I saw what those things can do to a person. They take you away from what really matters. I saw the doubt in Lucas's eyes, but I also sensed that something was awakening in him. He was beginning to listen to me. I knew I had to be clear and direct, unhurriedly, but with the firmness of someone who now knows the truth. I don't want you to get lost, just as I saw other souls get lost, son. Evil tries to attract us, but you have something stronger than any temptation. You have the light of God in you, and I will be by your side to guide you so that together we can walk in the right direction. We will push aside all that is affecting you. He looked at me, and for the first time, I felt like he was really listening to me. I didn't know exactly how he would react, but something inside me told me that this conversation was the beginning of a change. I wasn't lost, but I was on the brink, and I could be the guide he needed. So I decided to take more concrete actions. It wouldn't just be a conversation, it was time to nip the evil in the bud. I took Lucas's cell phone without argument and spoke to him. We're going to take it. I wish that Lucas is not healthy, and you need to know that your worth doesn't come from the things you see or buy. I'll be here to help you control what you see and hear so you don't get lost. We can do this together. He remained silent, but he seemed to understand the seriousness of the situation. He knew it wouldn't be easy, that the path would be full of challenges, but he was also aware that the first step had already been taken, to be firm and follow Jesus' example, not only with Lucas but with the other people around me. In the following days, I began to share with friends and family what I had seen about the invisible evil that was affecting the younger generations. It wasn't just about products and consumerism, but about spiritual disconnection. The lack of real values that were leading people to emptiness. I knew my mission didn't end at home. Jesus had shown me that evil is not limited to one place but permeates all of society. With Lucas in mind, I began organizing small gatherings, talks, and even seeking support from other people in the church to create a supportive environment for them, children and young people, where they could learn to discern the influences of the world and seek what truly matters. The mission was just beginning. Jesus' vision showed me the truth, and now it was my duty to share that light with others. Salvation began at home but extended to the community. I knew that together we could resist temptations and help more people to see the true path to peace and happiness. Sometimes life places us in situations that make us question the true purpose of our existence. In a world where we are constantly bombarded by external images, products, and promises of happiness, it's easy to get lost and forget what really matters. True peace and joy are not found in material things or in the image we present to the world, but in our connection with the divine, with our inner selves, and with those we love. It is vital to reflect on how the influences around us shape our decisions and how those decisions affect not only our lives but also the lives of those we love in times of crisis or despair. As I saw in my own experience, God calls us to awaken. He offers us the light we need to dispel the darkness and find the true path. Every decision we make, every thought we entertain can bring us closer to what really matters: peace, love, and the truth that come from God. Sometimes we need a push to see what is hidden, and that is precisely what reflection offers us. About our journey, if this message has touched you, if it has resonated in your heart in any way, I invite you to like this channel and follow more reflections like this. Together we can share light, learn from each other, and walk in the direction of what truly matters. Don't forget to follow us, and let's build together a path of faith, truth, and transformation. Like, share, and be part of this journey of change and growth.